Story 1. The Silent Patrol Route. I was standing at checkpoint 7 when my radio crackled with my own voice. Not similar, not close, mine. The exact cadence, the slight rasp I've had since I was a kid. Checkpoint 7 logged at 2:47, it said. But I hadn't spoken, my thumb wasn't even near the transmit button. I looked down at my logbook and there it was. An entry I didn't write, in handwriting that looked like mine had looked 15 years ago before the tremor started in my right hand. That's when I realized the platform had gotten longer. My name is Dennis Kowalski, and I've worked transit security for the Metropolitan Underground for 11 years. I know every inch of the Green Line's northern terminus. Every cracked tile, every flickering light fixture, every cold spot where the ventilation duct needs servicing. I know the echo pattern of footsteps on Platform 6 versus Platform 7. I know which turnstiles stick and which security cameras have the 3-second delay. This isn't pride, it's just what happens when you walk the same route 5 nights a week for over a decade. The shift always starts the same way. I clock in at 22 on at the Central Security Office, collect my radio and logbook, review any incident reports from the day shift, and begin my first patrol loop by 22:30. 8 checkpoints spread across 4 platforms and 2 maintenance corridors. Each checkpoint has a small metal post with a numeric code plate. You scan your badge, the system logs your location and timestamp, and you move on. Simple, methodical. The kind of routine that makes you feel like you're holding the chaos of the city at bay, even if only in this small underground corner of it. That Tuesday started no differently. The day shift supervisor, Linda Garrett, briefed me on a minor incident. Someone had vomited on Platform 3 already cleaned up, and reminded me that Checkpoint 4's scanner was temperamental. Might need to swipe twice, she said, gathering her things. I nodded. I already knew. That scanner had been temperamental for 6 months. The station was quiet. Tuesday nights usually are. The last passenger train had passed through at 21:43, and the next wouldn't come until 05:12. Between those hours, the station belonged to maintenance crews, the occasional track inspector, and people like me. I prefer it this way. There's a particular quality to the silence down here after the crowds leave. Not peaceful exactly, but settled, like the station is exhaling. I began my first loop at 22:34. Checkpoint 1 in the main concourse near the shuttered ticket windows. Scan, log, move on. The fluorescent lights hummed their usual low electric song. Checkpoint 2, Platform 1, northern end. The platform stretched away into darkness where the tunnel curved. Scan, log, move on. Checkpoint 3, the service corridor behind Platform 2. The smell of oil and damp concrete. Scan, log, move on. By the time I reached Checkpoint 4, the temperamental one, it was 23:02. Linda had been right. I had to swipe twice. I wrote the time in my logbook with the pen I've carried since my first week on the job. Black ink, neat block letters. I've always been particular about my logs. They're a record, a proof that someone was paying attention. Checkpoint 5, Checkpoint 6. The routine was a rhythm, almost meditative. My footsteps echoed in the empty station, a steady percussion that marked my passage through the space. At 23:31, I reached Checkpoint 7, located at the southern end of Platform 4, the deepest platform in the station. Platform 4 always feels different. Colder, the ventilation is worse down here, and there's a persistent metallic smell that maintenance has never quite identified. I raised my badge to the scanner, but before I could swipe, my radio crackled. Checkpoint 7 logged at 02:47. My voice. My exact voice. I froze, thumb hovering over the transmit button. I looked at my radio. I hadn't pressed anything. The display showed the channel was clear. I glanced at my watch. 23:31, not 02:47. The timestamp made no sense. I pressed the transmit button. Central, this is Kowalski. Did you just hear a transmission from me? Static for 3 seconds, then the night dispatcher's voice. Negative, Kowalski. No transmissions from your unit in the last 20 minutes. You need something? No, just checking the radio. Thought I heard some interference. Copy that. Let me know if it continues. I clipped the radio back to my belt and looked at the checkpoint scanner. The small LED screen showed my last scan. Checkpoint 6, 2318. Normal. I swiped my badge at checkpoint 7. The scanner beeped. The LED updated. Checkpoint 7, 2332. But when I looked down at my logbook to record the entry, there was already writing there. Checkpoint 7, 0247. The handwriting looked like mine, but not quite. It was neater, more careful. The way I used to write before the tremor started. Before my hand got lazy with the repetition of 1,000 identical log entries. I stared at it for a long moment, my mind trying to construct a rational explanation. Had I written it earlier and forgotten? No. I'd never reached checkpoint 7 earlier tonight. Had someone else written it? No. The logbook had been in my jacket pocket since I'd started my shift. I flipped back through the previous pages. All my entries from tonight were there, in my current handwriting. The slightly shaky letters, the abbreviated shorthand I'd developed. But this one entry, this future entry, was different. I looked up from the logbook and something felt wrong. Platform 4 stretched ahead of me into the tunnel, and it looked longer. Not dramatically, not in a way I could point to and say, definitively, this has changed. But I've walked this platform hundreds of times, and I know where the far signal light sits relative to the tile pattern on the wall. The signal light looked farther away than it should have been, as if the platform had stretched while I wasn't looking. I shook my head. Lack of sleep, maybe. I'd had coffee before my shift, but I'd slept poorly the night before, jerking awake at 3 a.m. from a dream I couldn't remember. I was just tired, seeing things. I completed the rest of my patrol loop, checkpoint 8 in the electrical room, quick and uneventful, and returned to the security office at 0014. I sat at the desk and began transcribing my logbook entries into the digital system as required. When I reached the checkpoint 7 entry, I paused. Should I enter the timestamp I'd actually scanned, 2332, or the one that had mysteriously appeared in my logbook, 02.47? I entered 2332. The system accepted it. I started my second patrol loop at 0045. The station felt different now, though I couldn't articulate how. The silence seemed denser. My footsteps sounded slightly off, as though the echo was coming from the wrong direction. When I reached checkpoint 4, I had to swipe 3 times instead of 2. At 0119, I approached checkpoint 7 again. The platform still looked too long. I was sure of it now. I stopped walking and counted the overhead light fixtures from where I stood to the tunnel entrance. 14. I'd never counted them before, but the number felt wrong. Too many. My radio crackled. Checkpoint 7 logged at 2:47. My voice again. Same sentence, same tone. Central, this is Kowalski. I'm getting that interference again. You're sure you're not hearing transmissions from my unit? A pause. Then, Kowalski, our board shows you haven't transmitted since 0016. Are you feeling all right? Yeah, I'm fine. Just must be radio bleed from another frequency. We don't have another unit operating on your frequency tonight. Do you want me to send a tech down? No, I'll monitor it. Kowalski out. I scanned checkpoint 7, 0120. I wrote it in my logbook, watching my hand form the numbers, my handwriting. Shaky. Real. Underneath my entry in that other handwriting was a new line I hadn't seen before. You should have left at 0115. My breath caught. I flipped back through the logbook. The previous pages were unchanged, my entries normal, documented. But this page, the current page, had entries I didn't write, instructions I didn't give myself. I looked up at the platform. 15 light fixtures now. I was certain there had been 14 a moment ago. The rational part of my brain, the part trained in security protocols and incident response, knew I should report this. Call Central, request backup, log an anomaly. But another part of me, a deeper part, understood that whatever was happening existed outside the boundaries of incident reports and protocol. This wasn't a drunk passenger or a broken scanner, this was something else. I heard footsteps, not mine. I was standing still. The footsteps were coming from deeper in the tunnel, beyond the platform's end where the track curved into darkness. Steady, measured footsteps, the same rhythm as my patrol walk. My hand went to my radio, but I didn't transmit. I just listened. The footsteps stopped. The silence that followed was absolute. No ventilation hum, no distant train rumble, no city noise filtering down from the surface. Just silence and the feeling of something waiting. I looked at my watch, ZO124. I looked at my logbook. The most recent entry in that too neat handwriting, checkpoint 7 logged at 2:47. You're late. I walked backwards slowly, not taking my eyes off the tunnel entrance. The darkness there seemed thicker than normal, almost textured. I've worked in this station for 11 years, and I've never been afraid of the tunnels, but I was afraid now. I completed my patrol loop automatically, muscle memory carrying me through the remaining checkpoint. When I returned to the security office at 0203, I sat at the desk and stared at my logbook. I didn't want to turn the page. I knew what I would find there. I turned the page. The next page was filled with entries, all in that other handwriting. Checkpoint logs from future patrols, times I hadn't reached yet, notes I hadn't written. And at the bottom of the page, a single sentence. The platform is always longer when you don't notice it growing. I looked at the security monitors. 12 screens showing various angles of the station. Platform 4 appeared on monitor 7. I could see the checkpoint scanner, the tile walls, the signal light in the distance, and I could see a figure standing at the checkpoint, dark uniform, same build as me, same posture. But I was sitting in the security office. I watched the figure on the monitor. It raised a badge to the scanner. It looked down at something, a logbook presumably. It started walking toward the tunnel, toward the darkness at the platform's end. It didn't stop. It walked past the signal light, past the point where the platform should end, and continued into the tunnel. The monitor showed 0247 in the corner timestamp. My radio crackled one final time, but the voice that came through wasn't quite mine anymore. It was tired, older, resigned. Checkpoint 7, still logging, still walking. The patrol route doesn't end, it just gets longer. I sit here now at 0435 writing this. My shift ends at 06 in hours, but I don't think I'll be leaving. The logbook has entries written through next week. The monitors show platform 4 from angles that don't exist. And when I look at my reflection in the darkened screen of the computer, my handwriting on the reports behind me looks neater than it should. Tidier, like it used to be, before the tremor started. Some patrol routes don't loop back to where you began, they just stretch further into places that look familiar but aren't. You keep logging checkpoints because that's the job. Because the routine is what keeps you tethered. But eventually you realize the checkpoints are logging you. The station hums its electric song, and somewhere beneath it I hear footsteps matching my own rhythm exactly. I know I should report this, but I also know that the reports are already written, filed by someone with my name and my badge number, someone who learned a long time ago that some shifts never really end. Story 2. The footage that watched back camera. 12 showed platform 9 from the northwest angle, overlooking the benches in the service door. The figure stood beside the third bench, hands at its sides, completely motionless. That wasn't unusual. People freeze sometimes when they realize they've missed the last train. But then I switched to camera 15, the southeast angle facing the opposite direction, and the figure was there too, in the exact center of the frame, staring directly into the lens. Same posture, same stillness. I felt my stomach drop. I cycled through all 6 cameras covering platform 9. In every single feed, the figure faced the camera, always centered, always watching. And in camera 12's reflection on the platform window, I could see the security office behind me, lit by monitor glow. I could see myself at the desk, but the angle was wrong. Camera 12 couldn't see into the security office. There was no camera position to capture that view. Yet there I was, reflected, watching myself watch. My name is Martin Kellerman, and I've been a security monitoring officer for the Central Metro Transit Authority for 7 years. My job is simple. I sit in a climate-controlled room with 16 monitors and watch 12 hours of footage per shift, logging anything unusual. Trespassers, medical emergencies, equipment malfunctions, unattended baggage. Most nights, I log nothing. The overnight shift, 22 to 10 man, is remarkably uneventful. After the last train departs and before the first maintenance crew arrives, the station enters a kind of suspended state. Empty platforms, motionless escalators. The cameras record miles of nothing. I prefer it this way. I've never been comfortable with crowds. The monitoring room suits me. It's small, maybe 10 feet by 12, with gray walls, fluorescent lighting, and a desk covered in monitors, keyboards, and a logbook that's probably older than I am. The room has one door which locks from the inside and no windows. The ventilation is adequate. The coffee machine in the corner is not. I bring my own in a thermos. The monitoring system covers 43 cameras across 6 platforms in various corridors. I can cycle through feeds manually or let the system rotate automatically every 15 seconds. I usually let it rotate. Watching static platforms manually induces a hypnotic boredom that makes the shift feel twice as long. That Wednesday began routinely. I clocked in at 21:53, relieved the evening shift officer, a guy named Paul who barely acknowledged me, and settled into my chair. I reviewed the day shift incident log. 1 medical call on platform 3, resolved. 1 turnstile malfunction, maintenance notified. 1 unattended backpack, searched, harmless, returned to lost and found. Standard. I initiated the camera rotation and opened my thermos. The coffee was already lukewarm. By 23:30, I'd logged nothing. The platforms were empty. The escalators were still. A few overhead lights flickered on platform 7, a chronic electrical issue that maintenance kept promising to fix. But otherwise, everything was exactly as it should be. At UNRWA 017, camera 12 caught my attention during a rotation. Platform 9. A figure standing by the 3rd bench. I stopped the rotation and focused on camera 12. The figure was male, average height, wearing dark clothing, jeans, and a jacket, possibly navy or black. He stood motionless, facing away from the camera toward the tunnel entrance. His posture was neutral. Hands at his sides, no luggage, no visible movement. I checked the time log. The last train had departed platform 9 at 23:54. This person had either missed it or chosen not to board. Both scenarios were plausible. People sometimes come down to the platform just to sit, to think, to exist somewhere other than the street. I made a note in the logbook. 00:17, single individual observed on platform 9. No apparent distress. Monitoring. I switched to camera 15 to get a different angle. The figure was facing the camera. Not just oriented in that direction, facing it. Centered perfectly in the frame, staring directly into the lens. Same clothing, same posture. But now, unmistakably looking at the camera. I felt a cold prickle at the base of my neck. I glanced back at camera 12. The figure was still there, still facing away from the camera toward the tunnel. Two different feeds. Same timestamp. E018, same figure. Two different positions. I cycled to camera 17, mounted above the platform entrance stairs. The figure appeared in that feed too, standing near the fare gate, facing upward toward the camera. The angle was steep, almost directly overhead, but the posture was identical. Hands at sides, stillness, watching. I cycled through all 6 cameras covering platform 9. In every feed, the figure appeared, always alone, always facing the camera. The position changed, near the benches in one, by the service door in another, at the far end of the platform in a third, but the orientation never did. No matter the angle, the figure stared into the lens. My hands felt cold. I rubbed them together, trying to generate warmth, trying to generate an explanation. Camera malfunction? No. Each feed was clear, timestamps matched, no visual distortion. A prank? Impossible. The station was locked down. No one could access 6 different camera positions simultaneously. A video loop? No, I could see the timestamp incrementing in real time. I picked up the phone to call Central Dispatch, then hesitated. What would I report? There's someone on platform 9 and they're looking at the cameras. That wasn't a security threat. That was just unsettling. I put the phone down and focused on camera 12, the clearest feed. The figure remained motionless. I watched for 3 full minutes. No movement, no shift in weight, no adjustment of posture. Absolute stillness. I switched to camera 9, which covered the security office hallway, the hallway directly outside my door. The feed showed the empty corridor, fluorescent lights, gray walls, the locked door to my room. Except the door was open. I spun in my chair and looked at the physical door behind me. Closed. Locked. I'd locked it myself when I arrived. I looked back at the monitor. Camera 9 showed the door ajar, a sliver of light spilling into the hallway. And in that sliver I could see the edge of the monitoring desk. My desk. The monitors. And a figure sitting in my chair, back to the camera, facing the screens. My heart rate spiked. I stood up, walked to the door, checked the lock. Engaged. I opened it, looked into the hallway. Empty. Fluorescent lights humming, no one there. I closed and locked the door again, returned to my desk. Camera 9 now showed the door closed, the hallway empty. Normal. I sat down slowly. My hands were shaking. I clasped them together to stop the tremor. I cycled back to platform 9. The figure was gone from all 6 feeds. Empty platform, empty benches, empty tracks. I exhaled. Some kind of glitch. Had to be. A digital artifact. A rendering error. Something explainable. I logged the incident. 0023. Visual anomaly observed on multiple platform 9 feeds. Anomaly resolved. Possible system malfunction. Recommend technical review. I tried to return to the standard rotation, but my focus was fractured. I kept glancing at camera 12, expecting the figure to reappear. The coffee tasted sour. The ventilation seemed louder than usual, a mechanical wheeze that made it hard to concentrate. At 01:45, camera 4, which covered platform 2, showed a figure standing at the edge of the platform, looking directly into the camera. Same posture. Same stillness. I immediately cycled to the other platform 2 cameras. Cameras 5 and 6 showed the figure in different positions, always facing the lens. The figure appeared closer in these feeds. I could see more detail now. Male, yes, dark jacket, but the face was indistinct, blurred, as though the camera couldn't quite resolve the features. The harder I tried to focus on the face, the more it seemed to slide out of clarity. I checked camera 4 again. The figure was closer now, standing at the yellow safety line, maybe 6 feet from the camera position. I hadn't seen it move. It had simply been further away before, and now it was closer. I watched, unable to look away. The figure raised one hand, slowly, deliberately, and pointed at the camera. At me. My breath caught. I leaned back in my chair. An instinctive retreat from the screen, even though I knew the figure couldn't reach through the monitor. The rational part of my brain knew that. But the older, deeper part, the part that still fears shadows and dark corners, wasn't convinced. I switched to camera 9, the hallway outside my door. The door was open again, wider this time. I could see more of the room now, the monitors glowing, the desk, the chair, and I could see myself, sitting at the desk facing the monitors, exactly as I was sitting now, but the angle was wrong. Camera 9 was mounted in the hallway, facing the door. It couldn't see inside the room at that angle. It couldn't show the desk, the monitors, my back. Yet there I was. I stood up and walked to the door again, moving slowly as though sudden movement might trigger something. I unlocked it, opened it. The hallway was empty. I stepped out, looked up at camera 9 mounted on the wall. It was angled toward the door as it should be, no possible line of sight into the room. I stepped back inside, locked the door, returned to the desk. Camera 9 now showed the hallway from inside the room, looking out through the open door, as though the camera had moved, or as though I was watching myself from a camera that didn't exist. I sat down and forced myself to breathe slowly, in through the nose, out through the mouth. This was a malfunction, a system error, something technical, something fixable. I cycled back to platform 2. The figure was gone. I cycled through all 43 cameras, normal feeds, empty platforms, no figures, no anomalies. I logged the incident. Era 147. Visual anomaly observed on platform 2 feeds and camera 9. Anomalies resolved. System behavior erratic. Strongly recommend immediate technical review. At 0310, every monitor went black simultaneously. Not powered off, the screens were still on, glowing faintly, but displaying pure black. No feeds, no timestamps, no interface, just black. I tapped the keyboard. No response. I checked the cables. Secure. I pressed the manual reset button on the main console. Nothing. Then, one by one, the monitors turned back on. But they weren't showing the station anymore. Camera 1 showed the monitoring room from an overhead angle, an angle that didn't exist. I could see myself sitting at the desk looking up at the monitors. My face was clear, confused, frightened. Camera 2 showed the monitoring room from a side angle, through the wall as though the camera were embedded in the concrete. Camera 3 showed me from behind, through the locked door. Every monitor showed the monitoring room. Every monitor showed me, from impossible angles. Angles that penetrated walls, floors, ceilings. Angles that surrounded me. And in every feed, in the background, standing just outside the frame, barely visible in the peripheral darkness, was the figure, always watching. I spun around looking at the physical room, empty. Just me, the desk, the monitors, the locked door. I looked back at the screens. In camera 7, I could see the figure more clearly now. It was standing directly behind my chair, looking over my shoulder at the monitors. At the feeds, showing me. At the feeds showing it standing behind me. I lurched out of the chair and backed against the wall, heart hammering. I looked at where the figure should be. Nothing. Empty space. On the monitors, the figure moved closer. I ran to the door, fumbled with the lock, threw it open, and stumbled into the hallway. I looked back at the monitoring room. Empty. Just the desk, the glowing monitors, the chair I'd been sitting in. I stepped back inside slowly. The monitors had returned to normal. Standard feeds, platforms, corridors, escalators, timestamps ticking forward. Everything as it should be. I approached the desk cautiously, as though it might lash out. I sat down. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I didn't log this incident. I couldn't. What would I write? The cameras turned around and looked at me. I saw myself from angles that don't exist. Something is watching me through the monitoring system. I completed the rest of my shift in silence, staring at the rotating feeds, waiting for the figure to reappear. It didn't. The platforms remained empty. The cameras showed exactly what they were supposed to show. When the morning shift arrived at 10 a.m., a woman named Karen, efficient and brusque, I handed over the logbook without a word. She flipped through it, nodded, and settled into the chair I'd just vacated. I clocked out at 10:07 and walked to my car. The sunlight felt wrong after 12 hours of artificial light. The city smelled like exhaust and frying oil, ordinary and real. I didn't go home. I drove to a coffee shop and sat by the window watching people pass. Real people, moving people, people who cast shadows and breathed and didn't stare into cameras with impossible persistence. I haven't been back to work in 4 days. I called in sick. They accepted it without question. The transit authority is always short-staffed. Someone else is sitting in that monitoring room now, watching those feeds, cycling through those cameras. I wonder if they've seen the figure yet. I wonder if they've noticed the angles that don't quite match the camera positions. I wonder if they've looked at camera 9 and seen themselves sitting at the desk, watched from perspectives that shouldn't exist. I still see the feeds sometimes when I close my eyes, the platforms, the corridors, and the figure always in the frame, always watching, always still. We record everything down there, miles of footage, thousands of hours, every angle documented. But sometimes the cameras show us more than what's in front of them. Sometimes they show us what's watching back. And once you've seen it, really seen it, you realize the surveillance goes both ways. The monitors are always on somewhere in the city, cycling through feeds, capturing every empty platform and silent corridor. And in those feeds, in those endless loops of recorded nothing, something is waiting to be noticed. Something that only moves when the camera turns away. Story 3. The unauthorized access alert. The security alert came through at 02:33, maintenance door 14B, unauthorized access, biometric scan detected. I pulled up the access log on my terminal and felt my stomach twist. The fingerprint ID matched mine. Badge number 4471K, my badge. But I was standing in the security hub 40 feet above the track level, nowhere near door 14B. I checked the timestamp again. 02:33:17. Current times 02:33:20. The scan had happened 3 seconds ago. I looked down at my hands at the security badge clipped to my belt. I pressed my thumb against the terminal scanner, watched it verify my identity. Then I pulled up the door 14B footage. The camera showed a figure in a security uniform standing at the door, badge raised, the panel glowing green as the lock disengaged. The figure opened the door and stepped inside. The camera angle couldn't show the face. But I knew the uniform. I recognized the posture. I'd seen that exact stance in mirrors for 6 years. And from the corridor beyond the door, barely audible through the security feed, I heard a voice. My voice. Call out, "Officer requesting backup at 14B. Something's wrong with the tunnel." My name is Aaron Pritchard, and I am a Level 2 security officer for the Bay Metro Transit Authority. I have been employed in this capacity for 6 years, 3 months, and 12 days. My responsibilities include monitoring biometric access points, responding to security breaches, conducting perimeter checks, and maintaining incident logs for all restricted areas within the station infrastructure. I hold clearance for Zones 1 through 7. I do not have clearance for Zone 8. No one I've spoken to has clearance for Zone 8. I'm not entirely sure Zone 8 exists outside of floor plan inconsistencies and maintenance blueprints that reference it but never show it. Security work in a subway system is 90% boredom and 10% procedural response. You monitor doors that never open. You log access attempts that never come. You walk corridors that never change. The job demands vigilance toward the mundane, and that's what makes it tolerable. The routine becomes a kind of meditation. You stop expecting anomalies. That Wednesday night was my third consecutive overnight shift. I'd clocked in at 22 hours, reviewed the transition report from the evening officer. Nothing significant, a stuck turnstile on platform 6 already flagged for maintenance, and settled into the security hub. The hub is a reinforced room on the mezzanine level, accessible only by keycard and biometric scan. It contains 4 monitors covering the restricted access points, a workstation terminal for the security database, a radio console, and a coffee maker that produces something vaguely coffee adjacent if you adjust your expectations accordingly. The restricted areas are the parts of the system the public never sees. Maintenance tunnels, electrical rooms, ventilation shafts, pump stations, and the older sections of the network that predate the modern platforms. These spaces are secured not because they're dangerous, though some are, but because they're liability risks. Someone wanders into a maintenance tunnel, gets lost, gets hurt, the transit authority gets sued. Hence the locked doors. Hence my job. Most restricted doors are accessed by maintenance crews during scheduled shifts. Their IDs are logged, their access times are recorded, and their exits are confirmed. It's all procedural. The system flags anomalies automatically. Unscheduled access, failed biometric scans, doors left unsealed. When a flag appears, I investigate. Usually it's a maintenance worker who forgot to update their schedule, or a door sensor malfunctioning. I've worked here 6 years. I've never encountered an actual security threat. At 02:33, an alert flashed on monitor 3. Unauthorized access, door 14B. I set down my coffee and pulled up the access log. Door 14B is located in sub-level 3 near the old southern junction where the original 1960s tunnels meet the modern transit lines. It's a heavy steel door, biometric lock, requires both fingerprint and badge scan for entry. According to the schedule, no maintenance was planned for that sector tonight. The door should have remained sealed. The log showed a successful biometric scan at 02:33:17. I clicked the entry to expand the details. Badge ID, 4471K fingerprint match, confirmed access granted, 02:33:17 badge 4471K was mine. I looked down at my belt, at the badge clip there, still attached, still present. I pressed my thumb against the terminal's biometric scanner, a reflexive verification. A need to confirm I was still myself. The scanner beeped. Identity confirmed. Aaron Pritchard, badge 4471K. I stared at the screen. Someone had accessed door 14B using my credentials. Either the system had malfunctioned, a cloned scan, a database error, or someone had bypassed the biometric lock using my stored biometric data. Both scenarios were concerning. Both violated protocol. I switched monitor 3 to the door 14B camera feed. The camera was mounted above the door, angled downward, covering the access panel and the corridor approach. The timestamp showed 02:33:10, 7 seconds before the access alert. The corridor was empty. Steel walls, dim lighting, the door sealed. I fast-forwarded to 02:33:17. A figure appeared in the frame, approaching from the left side of the corridor. Security uniform. Dark pants, navy jacket, badge visible on the belt. The figure stopped at the door, raised a badge to the scanner, and pressed a hand against the biometric panel. The panel glowed green. The lock disengaged with an audible clunk. The figure pulled the door open and stepped inside. The camera angle didn't show the face. The figure's back was to the camera as they entered. But I could see the uniform clearly. The badge placement, The posture. The way the figure moved. Economical, practiced, no hesitation. I'd seen that movement in mirrors and reflective surfaces for 6 years. I knew that posture. It was mine. My hands felt cold. I rewound the footage and watched again, slower this time. The figure approached, scanned the badge, placed their hand on the panel. The panel accepted the scan. The door opened. The figure entered. The door closed behind them, re-engaging the lock. At 02:35, my radio crackled. A voice came through, calm, measured, recognizable. Officer requesting backup at 14B. Something's wrong with the tunnel. It was my voice. Not similar, not a voice that sounded like mine. My voice. The exact pitch, the exact cadence, the slight hoarseness I've had since a childhood bout of bronchitis. I grabbed the radio. Central, this is Pritchard. Did you just receive a transmission from my unit? The dispatcher's voice came back immediately. Negative, Pritchard. Your channel's been silent since you clocked in. Do you need something? I hesitated. I'm investigating a potential unauthorized access at door 14B. I may need backup. Copy that. Do you want me to send another unit down? I looked at the monitor. The corridor outside door 14B was empty. The door was closed. As if I requested backup, I'd have to explain the situation, that my credentials had been used without my knowledge, that I'd heard my own voice requesting assistance, that something impossible was happening. I'd sound unstable. I'd trigger a fitness for duty review. Negative. I'll assess and advise. Pritchard out. I clipped the radio back to my belt, grabbed a flashlight from the equipment rack, and left the security hub. The mezzanine level was deserted. The fluorescent lights hummed their perpetual electric drone. I descended the stairs to the platform level, then continued down a second stairwell, marked Authorized Personnel Only, to sub-level 2. The air grew cooler, denser, tinged with the smell of oil and wet concrete. Sub-level 3 required another stairwell, narrower and older than the others. The walls here were the original construction, brick and riveted steel from the 1960s. The lighting was sparse. My footsteps echoed in a way that made the space feel larger than it was. Door 14B was at the end of a 50-foot corridor. As I approached, I slowed, listening. No sounds, no movement. The door was closed, the access panel dark. I raised my badge to the scanner and pressed my thumb to the biometric panel. Access denied. Door currently accessed. I stared at the panel. The door was locked from the inside. Someone was in there, someone using my credentials. I pressed the intercom button beside the panel. This is Officer Pritchard. Identify yourself. No response. I tried the scanner again. Access denied. I stepped back and examined the door. Heavy steel, reinforced frame, no window. Industrial hinges. The door was designed to keep people out, not in. But the biometric lock worked both ways. If someone was inside and the system registered them as already accessed, I couldn't override it without a master clearance code, which I didn't have. I radioed Central. Dispatch, this is Pritchard. I'm at door 14B. The system shows the door accessed under my credentials, but I'm locked out, requesting a master override code. Stand by, Pritchard. I waited, flashlight aimed at the door, heart rate elevated. The corridor felt too quiet. Underground spaces are never truly silent. There's always the hum of ventilation, the distant rumble of trains, the groan of settling infrastructure. But this corridor had a muffled quality, as though the sound were being absorbed. The radio crackled. Pritchard, our system shows door 14B sealed. No active access logged since the last maintenance check at 18:45 yesterday. I looked at the access panel. Door currently accessed blinked in red. Dispatch, I'm looking at the panel right now. It shows an active access. A pause. Stand by. Let me pull the access history. Another pause, longer this time. Then, Pritchard, the log shows your badge scanned door 14B at 0233, but there's no entry record. The system didn't log you going through the door. It's like the scan happened, but the door never opened. The door opened. I watched it on camera. I'm looking at the camera feed now. The door's been closed for the last 6 hours. I felt a pressure building behind my eyes, the early edge of a headache. Dispatch, I need you to send another unit down here. Something's not right. Copy. Dispatching Officer Larkin. ETA 10 minutes. I waited in the corridor, flashlight beam fixed on the door, trying to construct a rational framework for what was happening. Database glitch, sensor malfunction, camera feed delay, all plausible, all inadequate. At 0247, my radio crackled again. Pritchard, it's Larkin. I'm at the sub-level 3 stairwell. Where are you? End of the corridor, door 14B. Copy, I'll be there in 30 seconds. I heard footsteps approaching from behind me. I turned, flashlight raised. Officer Larkin appeared at the corridor entrance. Tall, broad-shouldered, 15 years on the job. He nodded at me and walked over. What's the situation? He asked. Someone accessed this door using my credentials. The system says the door is currently open, but I can't get in. Larkin looked at the access panel, then at me. Your credentials? Yeah. He frowned. You've been in the hub all night? Yes. He pulled out his own badge and pressed it to the scanner. The panel beeped. Access granted. The lock disengaged. Larkin pulled the door open. Beyond the door was darkness. The maintenance tunnel stretched forward into black, no lights visible. The air that drifted out was cold and carried a metallic, stale smell. Larkin shone his flashlight into the tunnel. The beam revealed concrete walls, exposed piping, a corrugated steel ceiling. The tunnel extended about 30 feet before curving to the left. "Hello?" Larkin called out. His voice echoed, then faded. No response. He looked at me. You want to check it out, or you want to seal it and flag it for day shift? I didn't want to go into that tunnel. Every instinct I had said not to. But I couldn't articulate why. I couldn't tell Larkin that I'd heard my own voice on the radio, that I'd watched myself open this door on camera, that something impossible was happening. So I said, let's check it out. We entered the tunnel. Larkin led, I followed, both of us with flashlights raised. The tunnel was narrow, maybe 6 feet wide, and the ceiling was low enough that Larkin had to duck slightly. The walls were damp, slick with condensation. Our footsteps sounded wrong, too loud, too sharp. The tunnel curved left, then straightened. About 50 feet in, we reached a junction. 3 passages branched off, left, right, and straight ahead. Larkin consulted the map on his tablet. This junction isn't on the schematic, he said. I looked over his shoulder at the tablet screen. The map showed a single tunnel leading from door 14B to a ventilation access point 200 feet south. No junction, no branches. Maybe the map's outdated, I suggested. Maybe. Larkin didn't sound convinced. He shone his flashlight down each passage. The left and right passages looked identical to the one we'd come from. The center passage was wider, the walls smoother, almost polished. No piping, no ventilation ducts, just smooth concrete receding into darkness. Which way? Larkin asked. I didn't know. I looked at the center passage. Something about it felt wrong, too clean, too deliberate. Straight, I said. We walked down the center passage. It extended farther than my flashlight beam could reach. The air grew colder. My breath misted. After about 100 feet, Larkin stopped. You hear that? He asked. I listened. A low hum, rhythmic, almost mechanical. It wasn't the ventilation system, I knew that sound. This was deeper, more resonant. Yeah, I said. We continued forward. The hum grew louder. The passage began to descend, a gradual slope that I didn't remember from the entrance. The walls remained smooth, featureless. No doors, no junctions, just the passage and the hum and the cold. Larkin stopped again. "Pritchard, look at this." He aimed his flashlight at the wall. There were markings scratched into the concrete, not graffiti, not random. Deliberate lines organized in clusters. Tally marks, hundreds of them. I moved closer, tracing the marks with my flashlight. They covered a 10-foot section of the wall, floor to ceiling. Each cluster was 5 lines, the universal counting system. I started counting clusters. I reached 50 before I stopped. "Someone's been down here a long time," Larkin said quietly. I looked at the marks. The scratches were deep, made with something metal. They'd taken effort, time, persistence, and the marks looked old. The concrete around them had darkened with grime. "We should go back," I said. Larkin nodded. "Yeah." We turned around and walked back the way we'd come. But the passage didn't look the same. The walls were rougher now. Piping had appeared along the ceiling. The smooth concrete was gone. "Did we take a wrong turn?" Larkin asked. "We've been walking straight. There haven't been any turns." We continued. The passage curved left. We followed the curve. It curved right. We followed. It curved left again. "This isn't right," Larkin said. He pulled out his tablet, tried to bring up the map. No signal. The screen showed a loading icon, spinning endlessly. I checked my radio. Static. "Let's just keep going," I said. "We'll hit the door eventually." We walked for another 10 minutes. The passage continued to curve, a slow spiral that made it impossible to gauge our direction. The hum was still audible, fainter now, like we'd moved away from the source. My legs ached. My flashlight beam was dimming. Then Larkin stopped abruptly. "Pritchard." He aimed his flashlight at the wall. More tally marks. Same style, same depth. But these were fresh. The concrete around them was clean, pale, recent. I stepped closer and counted. 23 clusters, 115 marks. Below the marks, scratched in uneven letters. Still walking. Still here. AP. My initials. Larkin turned to look at me, his expression carefully neutral. "That you?" "No. Your initials." "I didn't write that." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay. Let's keep moving." We walked faster now, no longer trying to map our route, just moving forward with the hope that forward would eventually lead out. The passage continued its slow curve. My flashlight died. I shook it, smacked it against my palm. It flickered, dimmed, went dark. "I've got you," Larkin said, keeping his beam ahead of us. We walked in silence. The hum returned, louder now, coming from ahead. The passage straightened. In the distance I saw light. Not flashlight, something else. A pale blue-white glow. We approached cautiously. The passage opened into a small chamber, maybe 20 feet across. The light came from a panel embedded in the wall. An old access terminal, the kind installed in the 1960s. Long decommissioned. But it was active. The screen glowing, text scrolling across the display too fast to read. Larkin walked to the terminal and tapped the screen. The scrolling stopped. A single line of text appeared. Zone 8, access granted. Officer A. Pritchard, badge 4471K, entry logged, 023317. Below that, another line, you've been here before. Larkin looked at me. I shook my head. I've never been down here. I don't even know what Zone 8 is. The terminal screen flickered. New text appeared. You'll understand when you stop leaving. The chamber had 3 exits. One was the passage we'd come from. The other 2 were sealed with steel doors, identical to door 14B. One door had a biometric panel. I approached it, raised my badge. The panel glowed green before I even touched it. Access granted. The door unlocked. I pulled it open. Beyond was another tunnel, identical to the first, and in the distance, barely visible, I saw a figure walking away. Security uniform, my build, my posture. The figure stopped, turned, and looked back. The face was obscured by shadow, but I knew. Larkin grabbed my shoulder. "We're leaving. Now." He pulled me away from the door, back toward the passage we'd entered from. We ran. The passage seemed shorter this time. We reached door 14B in minutes. Larkin shoved it open and we stumbled into the sub-level 3 corridor. The door slammed shut behind us. The access panel went dark. We stood in the corridor, breathing hard. Larkin's radio crackled. The dispatcher's voice came through clearly. "Larkin, Pritchard, you copy?" Larkin keyed his radio. "Copy, dispatch. We're secure. Exiting sub-level 3 now." "Copy. For the record, you've been off comms for 42 minutes. Larkin and I looked at each other. It had felt like 20 minutes, maybe 30. We returned to the security hub without speaking. Larkin filed a brief incident report. Structural anomalies in sub-level 3 maintenance tunnels, recommend engineering review, and left. I sat at my workstation and stared at the monitors. At Oro 415, door 14B logged another access. Badge ID 4471K fingerprint match. Confirmed access granted. Oro 41508. I pulled up the camera feed. The corridor was empty. The door remained closed, but the log showed I was inside. I completed my shift mechanically. At 10 odd, I clocked out and handed the transition report to the morning officer. I drove home. I didn't sleep. 3 days later, I received a memo from administration. Due to access irregularities, badge 4471K has been flagged for review. Please report to HR for recredentialing. I didn't report. I submitted my resignation that afternoon. I haven't been back to the station. I don't know if Larkin is still working there. I don't know if door 14B is still logging my access. I don't know if someone is still walking those tunnels, scratching tally marks into walls, moving deeper into a place that isn't supposed to exist. But I know the terminal was right. I have been there before, I just don't remember when I started walking. And I don't know if I ever really stopped. Some doors lock you in even after you've left. Some tunnels just loop back to the beginning, over and over, until you forget which direction you were supposed to be going. And some credentials open doors that lead somewhere you've always been, waiting for yourself to arrive. Story 4. The Sleeping Passenger Incident Car 4, Seat 12C, northbound Red Line, 0147 a.m. A single passenger, male, mid-40s, slumped against the window. Standard end-of-shift sleeper. I approached from the rear of the car, footsteps echoing on the polished floor. "Sir, end of the line. You need to exit the train." The passenger didn't move. I walked closer. He was now in seat 8A. I stopped, looked back at seat 12C, empty. I looked forward again. The passenger was in seat 4D. I hadn't seen him move. He was just further away. I approached again. Each step I took, he appeared one row further. I walked the entire length of the car. He stayed ahead of me, always 4 or 5 rows distant, motionless, slumped, asleep. When I reached the front, I turned around. The passenger was back in Seat 12C, exactly where I'd first seen him. I pulled my radio, requested backup, and exited the car. Then I checked the CCTV. The footage showed me walking down the aisle, alone. No passenger. No one in seat 12C. Just me, walking, talking to empty air. My name is Curtis Brennan, and I am a transit police officer assigned to the Metropolitan Rail Authority Red Line Division. I have been with the MRA for 9 years, the last 4 spent exclusively on late-night patrol. My jurisdiction covers trains operating between 22:00 and 05 and Albert, the hours when passenger volume drops and the city's transit system transitions from public service to maintenance mode. During these hours, The trains run less frequently, every 30 to 45 minutes, and carry a particular subset of riders. Hospital workers ending night shifts, bar employees, insomniacs, and people who, for various reasons, find themselves moving through the city at hours when most have stopped. Late-night patrol is straightforward work. I board trains at random intervals, walk through the cars, check for safety violations, assist passengers who need help, and ensure no one is sleeping past their stop. The last task is the most common. People fall asleep. They miss their stops. They wake up at the terminus disoriented and annoyed. My job is to wake them before that happens. I've walked through thousands of train cars. I've woken hundreds of sleeping passengers. I know the typology: the exhausted nurse still in scrubs, the drunk businessman with his tie loosened, the teenager with headphones leaking tinny music, the elderly woman clutching a shopping bag. I know how to assess whether someone is merely asleep or in medical distress. I know the difference between a snore and a wheeze. I've been trained in conflict de-escalation and emergency first aid. I'm good at this job. I'm good at reading people. That Thursday night, I boarded the northbound Red Line at Civic Station at 01:35. The platform was nearly empty, 2 passengers waiting, neither of whom boarded my train. I entered through the rear door of car 4 and began my standard walkthrough. The car was clean, recently serviced, fluorescent lights bright and even. The seats were empty except for one passenger near the middle of the car. Seat 12C, male, mid-40s, wearing a gray overcoat and dark slacks. He was slumped against the window, head tilted at an uncomfortable angle, eyes closed. His hands rested in his lap. No visible luggage, no phone or book, just him, motionless, asleep. I approached from the rear, my boots making a measured cadence on the rubberized floor. The train swayed gently as it moved through the tunnel, the rhythmic clack of the rails providing a steady background hum. I stopped beside the passenger and spoke in the standard firm but polite tone I've used 1,000 times. "Sir, end of the line coming up. You need to exit the train." The passenger didn't respond, didn't shift, didn't open his eyes. I tried again, louder. "Sir, I need you to wake up." No response. I reached out to tap his shoulder and stopped. The passenger was no longer in seat 12C. He was in seat 8A, 4 rows ahead in the exact same position. Slumped, head tilted, eyes closed, same gray overcoat. I looked back at seat 12C, empty. The vinyl seat gleamed under the fluorescent light, undisturbed. I looked forward at seat 8A. The passenger was there, motionless. I stood very still, processing. I hadn't seen him move. I'd been looking directly at him, my hand extended toward his shoulder, and in the split second of hesitation before contact, he'd relocated. That was the only word my brain could produce. He had relocated. I took a breath and walked toward seat 8A. My heart rate was elevated, but my training overrode the flicker of unease. There was an explanation. I'd blinked. I'd misidentified the seat number. The passenger had moved while I was distracted. Simple. I reached seat 8A. The passenger remained motionless. I extended my hand again, aiming for his shoulder. He was in seat 4D. I froze. I hadn't blinked. I'd been looking directly at him. One moment he was there, solid and real, and the next he was 5 rows ahead, seamlessly transported, without motion, without sound, without any physical transition I could perceive. I turned and looked back down the length of the car. Every seat between me and the rear door was empty. I turned forward. The passenger sat in seat 4D, exactly as before. I walked toward him slowly, deliberately, keeping my eyes fixed on the gray overcoat. I didn't blink. I didn't look away. I watched him with the kind of focused intensity usually reserved for suspects who might run. I took 1 step. He remained in seat 4D. 2 steps. Still there. 3 steps. He was in seat 2B. I stopped walking. I was now standing in the exact spot where he'd been sitting a moment before. I could smell the faint residue of cologne or aftershave, something musky and stale. The seat vinyl was still warm. I looked ahead. The passenger sat 2 rows from the front of the car, slumped against the window, motionless. I keyed my radio. "Dispatch, this is Brennan, Red Line Car 4. I have a situation, requesting backup at the next stop." The dispatcher's voice came back immediately. "Copy, Brennan. What's the nature of the situation?" I hesitated. What could I say? I have a passenger who moves without moving. I'm chasing someone who stays ahead of me by teleporting. "Possible medical issue," I said finally. "Passenger unresponsive. I need another unit to assist." "Copy. We'll have Officer DeWitt meet you at Park Station. ETA 4 minutes. I clipped the radio back to my belt and looked at the passenger. He hadn't moved. I stood there in the middle of the car and considered my options. I could keep trying to approach him, though every attempt so far had been futile. I could wait for backup, or I could exit the car and reassess from outside. I chose the third option. I walked to the front of the car and exited through the forward door into the vestibule between car 4 and car 3. The door hissed shut behind me. I stood in the small enclosed space, breathing carefully, trying to stabilize my pulse. Through the window in the door, I could see into car 4. The passenger was back in seat 12C. Exactly where I'd first seen him, same position, same slump, same angle of the head. I watched him for a full minute. He didn't move. The train began to decelerate, the brakes engaging with a low pneumatic hiss. We were approaching Park Station. I stayed in the vestibule, watching through the window. The passenger remained motionless. The train stopped. The doors opened. I waited, expecting the passenger to exit. He didn't. The doors remained open for 30 seconds, then closed. The train began to move again. I re-entered car 4. The passenger was gone. I walked the length of the car, checking every seat, every corner. Empty. I checked under the seats, though I knew it was absurd. There was nowhere to hide in a train car. I opened the restroom at the rear. Empty. I exited through the rear door and walked through car 5, then car 6. Both empty. I continued through the entire train. 8 cars, all vacant except for a young woman in car 2 reading a paperback. Headphones on, oblivious. I returned to car 4 and stood in the center aisle, trying to reconstruct what had happened. The passenger had been there. I'd seen him. I'd smelled his cologne. I'd felt the warmth of the seat. At Park Station, Officer DeWitt boarded. He was in his late 20s, competent but inexperienced, still uncertain in the way young officers are. He looked around the empty car. "Where's the passenger?" he asked. "Gone," I said. DeWitt frowned. "You said unresponsive." He was, then he wasn't, then he disappeared. DeWitt studied my face, trying to determine if I was joking. I wasn't smiling. "You want to file a report?" he asked carefully. "Let me check the footage first." We exited the train at Park Station and went to the station security office, a cramped room with 2 monitors and a desk buried under incident logs. The night attendant, a bored middle-aged man named Phil, pulled up the CCTV feed for car 4. "What's the timestamp?" Phil asked. 01:42 through 01:50, I said. Phil queued up the footage. The monitor showed car 4 from the overhead camera near the rear door. At 01:42:18, I entered the car. I walked down the aisle. I stopped in the middle of the car. I appeared to be speaking to someone, but the seat I was facing was empty. I leaned closer to the monitor. "Rewind to 01:41, show me the car before I entered." Phil rewound the footage. At 01:41:30, car 4 was completely empty. At 01:42:18, I entered. At no point did any passenger appear in seat 12C or any other seat. "There was someone there," I said quietly. Phil shrugged. Camera doesn't lie, Curtis. I watched the footage again. The camera showed me walking down the aisle, stopping periodically, apparently speaking to no one. At one point, I extended my hand as if to tap someone's shoulder. My hand stopped mid-air. Then I walked forward, stopped again, extended my hand again. The motion looked erratic, irrational. I looked like someone experiencing a hallucination. DeWitt glanced at me. You okay, Brennan? I'm fine. You look tired. I'm fine. I wasn't fine. I was watching footage that contradicted my direct sensory experience. I knew what I'd seen. I'd seen a passenger. I'd seen him move without moving. I'd felt the warmth of the seat. The footage showed none of that. Phil saved the footage to the incident database and tagged it with a note. Officer reported unresponsive passenger. No passenger visible on camera. Possible fatigue-related misperception. I didn't argue. What could I say? DeWitt and I returned to the platform. The next northbound train arrived at 02:18. I boarded car 4 again, empty. I walked through it slowly, examining every seat. Nothing, no warmth, no cologne, no trace of anyone having been there. I completed the rest of my shift on autopilot, mechanically checking trains, speaking to passengers in the flat monotone of exhaustion. At 05:00, I clocked out and went home. I didn't sleep. I sat in my apartment and replayed the incident in my mind, searching for an explanation that made sense. 2 nights later, I was back on shift. At 01:52, I boarded the northbound Red Line at Civic Station, car 4. I entered through the rear door. The passenger was there, seat 12C, gray overcoat slumped against the window. I stopped in the doorway. My radio was in my hand, though I didn't remember reaching for it. I keyed the transmit button. Dispatch, Brennan. I need you to confirm something. Are you seeing car 4 on camera right now? A pause, then. Affirmative, Brennan. Car 4, northbound Red Line. You just boarded. Do you see any passengers in the car besides me? Another pause, longer this time. Negative, Brennan. Car shows empty except for you. I looked at seat 12C. The passenger was still there. I could see the rise and fall of his breathing. I could see the faint reflection of his face in the window. Copy, I said. Brennan out. I walked toward the passenger. He shifted to seat 8A. I kept walking. He shifted to seat 4D. I kept walking. He shifted to seat 2B. I walked until I was standing directly in front of him, close enough to touch. He opened his eyes. They were my eyes, same color, same shape. The face was mine, but older, worn. The face of someone who'd been riding this train for a very long time. The passenger, the other me, spoke in a voice that sounded like mine but tired, stripped of inflection. You'll keep checking this car, every night, looking for me, trying to prove I was here. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The passenger closed his eyes and slumped back against the window. When I blinked, the seat was empty. I exited the train at the next stop and requested an immediate end to my shift, citing illness. They granted it without question. I haven't ridden the Red Line since. I requested a transfer to day shift patrol, a different line, a different jurisdiction. They approved it. I work the Blue Line now, daylight hours, crowded trains full of people I can verify are real. But sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about that car. I think about the passenger who moved without moving, who wore my face, who knew I'd keep looking. And I wonder if he's still there, slumped in seat 12C, waiting for someone to wake him. Or if he's somewhere else now, riding a different train, always one seat ahead of whoever comes looking. Some passengers never exit. They just stay on the line, looping through stations that don't quite exist, waiting for the moment when someone else boards and sees them and realizes they're looking at a future they can't avoid. The doors close, the train moves on, and the seats, no matter how empty they look, are never really vacant. Story 5. The emergency call with no source. The call came through at 3:14 on the emergency line, the red phone that only rings for active crises. I picked up on the second ring. The voice on the other end was male, calm, familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. "Station officer, we have a situation on platform 12. I pulled up the system map. Platform 12 had been sealed since 1987, closed after structural damage, never reopened. "Who is this?" I asked. The voice continued as though I hadn't spoken. "Tell Copper to come home. He's been waiting long enough." Copper. That was my childhood dog's name. A name I hadn't heard in 30 years. "Who the hell is this?" I demanded. "You know who this is," the voice said softly. And I did. The voice was mine. The voice was my own, but older, stretched thin, like it had been echoing through empty platforms for decades. The line went dead. I checked the caller ID log. The call had originated from platform 12, extension 4402, an extension assigned to a phone that had been disconnected before I was born. My name is Victor Talbot, and I am a station security officer for the Harbor Line Metropolitan Transit System. I have held this position for 12 years. My responsibilities include monitoring the central security desk, coordinating emergency responses, managing access control for restricted areas, and maintaining communication with all active platforms and operational zones within the Harbor Line network. The network consists of 17 active platforms and 6 sealed or decommissioned platforms. I know every active line. I know every operational protocol. I know the emergency phone directory, the evacuation procedures, and the structural vulnerabilities of every platform in the system. I have never received a call from a platform that doesn't exist. Until 3 days ago. The Harbor Line operates around the clock, though service is significantly reduced between midnight and 05:00. During these hours, only maintenance staff and security personnel are on site. The station is quiet. No passenger announcements, no crowd noise, just the low hum of ventilation systems and the occasional distant rumble of a freight train passing through a parallel tunnel. Most emergency calls during the overnight shift come from maintenance crews reporting equipment issues or access problems. Serious emergencies, medical incidents, security threats, structural failures are rare. In 12 years, I've handled 4. That Wednesday night, I'd clocked in at 22 Vidar and settled into the security desk on the main concourse level. The desk is a reinforced booth near the central stairwell, equipped with 3 monitors showing camera feeds, a computer terminal for the access control system, a 2-way radio console, and 4 landline phones. 3 of the phones are standard office lines. The 4th is the emergency line, a red rotary phone with a dedicated circuit that connects directly to all operational platforms, control rooms, and maintenance offices within the system. The red phone is for emergencies only. It has a distinct ring, loud, sharp, impossible to ignore. It rings maybe once a month. At 03:14, the red phone rang. I was reviewing incident logs from the day shift when the sound cut through the quiet. I picked up the receiver on the second ring. Harbor Line Security Officer Talbot. The line was silent for 3 seconds. Not dead air. I could hear a faint static, a low background hum like an open line. Then a voice spoke. "Station officer, we have a situation on platform 12. The voice was male, calm, articulate. It sounded familiar, not in the way you recognize a coworker or a frequent caller. Familiar in a deeper, more unsettling way, like hearing your own voice played back on a recording but not quite right. I pulled up the platform directory on the terminal. Platform 12 wasn't listed in the active index. I switched to the historical database. Platform 12 appeared with the status tag, decommissioned, 1987, structural failure. The platform had been sealed after a partial ceiling collapse during construction of an adjacent tunnel. No one had accessed it in nearly 40 years. "Who is this?" I asked. The voice continued as though I hadn't spoken. "Tell Copper to come home. He's been waiting long enough." I felt a cold, sharp sensation in my chest, like I'd inhaled ice water. Copper. That was my dog's name. My childhood dog. A golden retriever my parents had bought me when I was 8. Copper had died when I was 12, hit by a car in front of our house. I hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in 30 years. "Who the hell is this?" I demanded, louder now. "You know who this is," the voice said softly. And I did. I recognized it now. The voice was mine. Not identical, it was older, stretched thin like it had been used too much and worn down. But the pitch, the cadence, the slight nasal quality I've always hated in recordings, it was unmistakably mine. The line went dead. I sat holding the receiver, listening to the flat dial tone, my heart rate spiking. I set the receiver down carefully and checked the caller ID log on the red phone's integrated display. The log showed incoming call, 0314-17 source platform 12 EXT 4402 duration 0041 extension 4402. I pulled up the phone directory. Extension 4402 had been assigned to the platform 12 service phone, a wall-mounted unit installed in the 1960s. According to the records, the phone had been disconnected in 1987 when the platform was sealed. The line had been physically cut. The phone had been removed, but the call had come from that extension. I sat very still, trying to construct a rational explanation. Phone system glitch, crossed lines, a routing error that pulled an archived extension number from the database. Someone pranking me, though I had no idea how they'd know my childhood dog's name or how they'd mimic my voice that precisely. None of the explanations felt adequate. I picked up one of the standard office phones and dialed the maintenance supervisor, a man named Ed Holloway, who'd worked the harbor line for 25 years. "Holloway," he answered, his voice thick with sleep. "Ed, it's Talbot at the security desk. Do you have any crews working near Platform 12 tonight?" A pause. Platform 12's been sealed since before I started, Victor. "Why?" "I just received an emergency call that originated from that platform." Another pause, longer this time. "That's not possible. The phone line was disconnected 40 years ago." "I'm looking at the log right now. Platform 12, extension 4402, call placed at 0314. You want me to come take a look?" "Yeah. And bring a master key for the sealed sections." "Copy. I'll be there in 20. I hung up and stared at the red phone. I didn't want to touch it again. I didn't want it to ring again. But I also couldn't leave the desk. I was the only security officer on duty until 06 Dosard. At 0336, Ed Holloway arrived at the security desk. He was in his early 50s, heavyset, perpetually dressed in grease-stained coveralls. He carried a large ring of keys and a maglite flashlight. "Show me the log," he said. I turned the terminal screen toward him. He leaned in, squinting at the display. "Huh," he said. "That's strange." "Strange?" "The system's showing that extension is active, but it shouldn't be in the database at all. When a line gets decommissioned, the extension is supposed to be purged. Can you check the physical line? See if it's actually disconnected?" "Yeah. We'll need to access the junction box near Platform 12. Follow me." We left the security desk and descended 2 levels via the service stairwell to sub-level 2, the oldest part of the station. The corridors here were narrow, the walls bare concrete, the lighting sparse. We passed through a series of locked doors, each requiring Ed's master key. The air grew colder and staler the deeper we went. Platform 12 was located at the end of a long corridor marked with faded warning signs. "Authorized personnel only. Structural hazard. Do not enter. Ed stopped in front of a heavy steel door with a rusted padlock. This is it, he said, platform access. He unlocked the padlock and pulled the door open. Beyond was darkness. Ed shone his flashlight inside. The beam revealed a narrow platform, maybe 50 feet long, with a low ceiling supported by steel beams. The walls were covered in grime and water stains. The tracks were rusted, overgrown with some kind of pale fungal growth. The air smelled like mold and wet stone. Phone junction box should be on the wall about 20 feet in, Ed said. We entered the platform. The door swung shut behind us with a heavy clang. Ed swept his flashlight along the left wall until the beam caught a gray metal box labeled Telephone Junction, Ext 4400-4410. He opened the box. Inside was a tangle of old wiring, most of it corroded. He traced the lines with his flashlight. Here's 4402, he said, pointing to a pair of red and black wires. They were severed, the ends frayed and brown with oxidation. Lines been cut for decades. No way this phone placed a call. Then where did the call come from? Ed shook his head. I don't know, Victor. Maybe the system logged it wrong. Maybe it was a different extension and the database glitched. I didn't respond. I was looking past Ed, deeper into the platform. At the far end, barely visible in the flashlight's peripheral glow, was something mounted on the wall. A phone. The old rotary service phone still hanging there, its receiver resting in the cradle. Ed, I said quietly, I thought you said the phone was removed. He followed my gaze. It was supposed to be. We walked toward the phone, our footsteps echoing on the damp concrete. The phone was ancient. Black bakelite casing, rotary dial, a coiled cord connecting the receiver to the base. The receiver was resting in the cradle. The phone looked dormant, dead. Ed picked up the receiver and held it to his ear. He frowned. There's a dial tone. That's impossible. I know. He pressed the hook switch several times. The dial tone persisted. He hung up the receiver and looked at me. This line is live. I don't know how, but it's active. I stared at the phone. Call the security desk. Use this phone. Ed hesitated, then picked up the receiver again and dialed the security desk number. I heard the faint pulse of the rotary dial clicking through the digits. After a moment, Ed's expression changed. It's ringing. He waited. No answer. You've got the desk set to voicemail? No, I never activate voicemail. Ed hung up and looked at the phone. This doesn't make sense. The phone rang. The sound was loud, piercing, impossibly sharp in the confined space. Ed and I both stepped back instinctively. The phone rang a second time, a third. You going to answer that? Ed asked quietly. I didn't want to. Every instinct I had said to leave the platform, seal the door, and never come back. But I'd spent 12 years in security. I'd been trained to confront problems, not run from them. I picked up the receiver and held it to my ear. This is Officer Talbot. Silence. Then faintly I heard breathing, slow, steady. Hello? I said. The breathing continued for several seconds. Then the voice spoke, my voice, that same worn, older version of it. You shouldn't have come down here, Victor. Who is this? You know who this is. You've always known. You just forgot. Forgot what? A pause. That some calls aren't meant to be answered. That some lines stay open even when they're supposed to be cut. You keep coming back here, trying to find the source, but the source is you. It's always been you. That doesn't make any sense. It will, when you stop leaving. The line went dead. I stood holding the receiver, the dial tone droning in my ear. Ed was watching me, his expression caught between concern and fear. What did they say? He asked. I hung up the receiver slowly. I think we should leave. We walked back to the platform entrance. Ed pulled the door open and we stepped into the corridor. He locked the door behind us, checked the padlock twice. We didn't speak as we ascended the stairs to the main concourse. At the security desk, Ed and I reviewed the call logs again. The 0314 call from Platform 12 was still there, logged and time-stamped. There were no other calls recorded from that extension. But when I checked the desk's missed call log, there was an entry. Missed call, 0348, Platform 12, EXT4402. The call Ed had placed from the platform phone. "I'm putting in a work order to have that phone physically removed and the junction box sealed," Ed said. "Good." He left. I sat at the desk, staring at the red phone. It didn't ring again that night. 2 days later, Ed called me. I went back to Platform 12 with a crew. We pulled the phone off the wall and cut every line in that junction box. There's no way anything down there can make a call now. "Thanks, Ed." "Yeah, no problem. Just do me a favor and don't ask me to go back down there again. That place feels wrong." I agreed. That night at 0314, the red phone rang. I stared at it, my hand hovering over the receiver. It rang again. I let it ring. It rang a third time, a fourth, a fifth. It didn't stop. The sound was relentless, filling the security booth, impossible to ignore. I picked up the receiver. "Harbor Line Security." "Victor," the voice said. My voice. "You can't disconnect me. I've been here longer than the station, longer than the phones. I've been here since you first walked through these doors and thought you could keep everything under control. But you can't control this. You never could. What do you want?" "I don't want anything. I'm just calling to remind you. Some lines stay open, some calls keep coming, and eventually you'll stop picking up and start listening, because that's all you'll be able to do." The line went dead. I filed an incident report the next morning citing equipment malfunction and requesting a full audit of the phone system. The audit found no issues. The lines were functioning normally. Extension 4402 was listed as inactive, disconnected, non-operational. But the red phone keeps ringing, always at 0314, always the same voice. I don't answer anymore. I just let it ring until it stops. Eventually it does. And then I sit in the silence waiting for the next shift, wondering if the voice is right. If I'll stop leaving. If I'll become another open line, echoing through the station, waiting for someone to pick up and hear what I've been trying to say all along. Some calls don't need to be answered to be heard. They just need to keep ringing somewhere in the dark until the station forgets the difference between a voice and an echo. Story 6. The Patrol That Never Ended. I've been walking this tunnel for 40 minutes. My map shows a straight passage 600 feet ending at Junction Access 4. I've counted my steps. I've tracked my time. I should have reached the junction 15 minutes ago, but the tunnel just continues. Same corrugated steel ceiling, same concrete walls, same yellow safety stripe painted along the floor. I stopped to mark the wall with chalk, a simple X at shoulder height, then kept walking. 5 minutes later, I found my mark, same X, same height. I'd looped back somehow, though I never turned. I haven't turned. There are no branches, no junctions, no curves. Just a straight line that somehow leads back to itself. My radio isn't working, my flashlight is dimming. And ahead, in the distance, I can see something moving toward me. It's walking the same steady pace I am. Same gait, same posture. I can hear the footsteps echoing, matching mine exactly. I stopped walking. The footsteps continued. And then I realized the thing ahead isn't coming toward me, it's me, walking toward myself, from the other end of a tunnel that doesn't end. My name is Jason Halstead, and I am a transit security officer, level 1, assigned to the northwest corridor of the City Underground Transit Authority. I have been employed in this role for 11 days. This is my first posting after completing the 6-week training academy. I am 24 years old, physically fit and qualified in emergency response protocols. I have no medical conditions, no history of mental illness, no prior disciplinary issues. These facts are important because what I'm about to describe will sound like the testimony of someone unreliable, someone compromised. But I am neither. I was. I am trying very hard to believe I still am. My assignment on my 8th night of active duty was a routine patrol of Tunnel 7C, a maintenance access corridor running parallel to the Red Line tracks between Harmon Station and Cedar Junction. The tunnel is part of the original 1950s infrastructure, narrow, utilitarian, used primarily for cable runs and emergency access. The patrol was listed as low priority. Verify the tunnel is clear, check for structural damage or water intrusion, and confirm that the emergency lighting system is operational. Estimated patrol time, 20 minutes. No special equipment required beyond a standard flashlight, radio, and tunnel map. I entered Tunnel 7C at Oro 147 through the access door at Harmon Station's sub-level maintenance bay. The door was marked with faded yellow paint, authorized personnel only, Tunnel 7C. I scanned my badge. The lock disengaged, and I stepped inside. The tunnel was exactly as described in the briefing. 6 feet wide, 8 feet high, concrete walls, corrugated steel ceiling, a yellow safety stripe painted down the center of the floor. Emergency lights were spaced every 50 feet, casting a dim, even glow. The air was cool and smelled faintly of oil and damp stone. Behind me, the access door closed and locked automatically. I activated my radio. Control, this is Officer Halstead. I'm beginning patrol of Tunnel 7C, entry time 0147. The response was immediate. Copy, Halstead. Estimated patrol time 20 minutes. Report when you exit at Junction Access 4. Copy, Halstead out. I began walking. The tunnel was straight, no curves, no branches. The map I'd been given showed a simple line, 600 feet from Harmon Access door to Junction Access 4. I've always been good with distances. I ran track in high school. I can estimate my pace accurately. At my standard walking speed, I'd cover 600 feet in roughly 3 minutes. I walked for 5 minutes. The tunnel continued unchanging. Same walls, same ceiling, same yellow stripe. The emergency lights passed at regular intervals, their spacing consistent. I checked my watch. 0152. I should have reached the junction by now. I stopped and consulted my map. A single straight line, no alternate paths, no notation of unusual length. I radioed Control. Control, Halstead, I'm 5 minutes into the patrol. I should be at the junction, but I'm still in the tunnel. Can you confirm the length of Tunnel 7C? A pause. Stand by. Halstead. Another pause, longer. Then, Halstead, our records show Tunnel 7C is approximately 600 feet, roughly a 3 to 5 minute walk. You're saying you're not at the junction yet? Correct. The tunnel just continues. Copy. Continue to the junction and report when you exit. If you're not out in 10 minutes, we'll send someone to check on you. Copy. Halstead out. I resumed walking. I kept my pace steady, deliberate. I counted my steps. At roughly 3 feet per step, I'd covered 200 steps by the time I checked my watch again. 0158. 600 feet. I should have reached the end. The tunnel continued. I stopped and looked back. The tunnel stretched behind me into darkness, the emergency lights receding in a straight line until they blurred together. I looked ahead. The same. Lights extending into the distance. The tunnel perfectly straight. I pulled a piece of chalk from my equipment pouch, standard issue for marking structural damage, and drew a large X on the wall at shoulder height. Then I continued forward. At 0203, I found my X. I stopped, staring at the mark. It was on the right-hand wall, same height, same size, my mark. I looked back the way I'd come. The tunnel stretched behind me, straight and unbroken. I hadn't turned. There had been no curves, no junctions. I'd walked in a straight line, but I'd returned to my starting mark. I radioed control. Control, Halstead. I have a situation. I'm marking the tunnel walls and I'm returning to my own marks. The tunnel is looping. Halstead, that's not possible. Tunnel 7C is a straight corridor. There are no loops. I'm looking at my own chalk mark right now. I've been walking straight for 16 minutes. A long pause. Halstead, are you feeling all right? Do you need medical assistance? I'm fine. The tunnel is wrong. Another pause. Halstead, we're dispatching Officer Carver to your location. Exit the tunnel immediately and wait at the Harmon access door. Do you understand? Copy. Returning to Harmon access. I turned around, a full 180-degree turn, and walked back the way I'd come. I walked for 6 minutes. The emergency lights passed at regular intervals. The tunnel remained straight. I didn't reach the Harmon access door. I stopped and looked back. The tunnel extended infinitely in both directions. I turned around again. The same. I was standing in the exact center of an infinite corridor with no landmarks, no variation, no exit. My radio crackled. Halstead, Carver here. I'm at the Harmon access door. You should be coming up on me any second. What's your position? I looked ahead. Empty tunnel. Carver, I don't see you. I'm still in the tunnel. I'm right here at the entrance, Halstead. The door's open. Where are you? I don't know. A pause. I'm coming in to find you. Stay where you are. Copy. I stood still and waited. I kept my eyes fixed on the tunnel ahead, watching for Carver's flashlight. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, no light. No sound except my own breathing and the faint hum of the emergency lights. My radio crackled again. Halstead, I've been walking for 7 minutes. I should have reached you by now. I'm not seeing anyone. I'm not seeing you either. This doesn't make sense. The tunnel's only 600 feet. I know. Static. Then, Halstead, I'm going to fire a flare. If you see it, call out your distance. Copy. I waited. 10 seconds later, I saw a bright red flash ahead of me, distant but visible. The flare arced upward and descended, illuminating a section of the tunnel maybe 300 feet away. I see it, I said. You're ahead of me, maybe 300 feet. Copy. I see your flashlight. I'm coming toward you. I watched Carver's flashlight beam grow brighter as he approached. He was moving at a steady jog. The distance closed rapidly. 50 feet, 30 feet, 20. He passed me. I spun around. Carver's flashlight was behind me now, receding into the distance. Carver, you just passed me. What? No, I'm still ahead of you. I can see your light. I looked ahead. There was a flashlight beam in the distance, steady and bright. Carver, flash your light 3 times. Copy. The beam ahead flashed 3 times. My light. I was looking at my own flashlight from further down the tunnel. Carver, I think we're in some kind of spatial loop. We're seeing ourselves from different positions. Static. Then Carver's voice strained. Halstead, I'm coming back to the Harmon door. I'm exiting the tunnel. You do the same. We regroup outside. Copy. I turned and walked back toward where I thought the Harmon door should be. I walked for 10 minutes. No door, no exit. Just the tunnel extending endlessly in both directions. At 02:31, my radio crackled one last time. Halstead, I can't find the door. I've been walking for 20 minutes. It's not here. Same, I said. And what the hell is going on? I don't know. The radio went silent. I kept walking. At some point, I don't know when, my watch seemed to have stopped at 2:47. I saw something ahead. A figure standing in the middle of the tunnel facing me. I stopped. The figure was wearing a security uniform, same build as me, same posture. I called out, Carver? No response. The figure didn't move. I walked toward it, slowly, cautiously. As I got closer, I could see more detail. The uniform was identical to mine, same badge placement, same equipment belt. The figure's face was obscured by shadow, backlit by an emergency light. I stopped 10 feet away. "Identify yourself." The figure didn't respond. I took another step forward. The figure took a step forward, mirroring me. I stopped. The figure stopped. I raised my flashlight and aimed it directly at the figure's face. It was my face, older, gaunt. The skin was pale, almost gray. The eyes were sunken, rimmed with dark circles. The expression was blank, empty. The figure, my future self, my echo, whatever it was, stared at me without recognition. I stepped back. The figure stepped back, maintaining the exact distance. "Who are you?" I asked, though I already knew. The figure's mouth moved, but the voice that came out was delayed like an audio lag. "You. Further down the line." "What does that mean?" "You'll understand when you've been walking long enough." "How long have you been here?" "I don't know. Time doesn't work the same here. You stop counting after a while, you just walk." "There has to be a way out." "There isn't. The tunnel doesn't end, it just loops forever. You keep walking because that's all there is." I shook my head. "No. I'm leaving. I'm finding the door. You'll try, you'll keep trying. But eventually you'll realize the door only exists behind you. And by then you'll have walked too far to turn back." The figure turned and walked away, deeper into the tunnel. I watched it recede, the silhouette shrinking until it merged with the darkness. I stood there alone, trying to process what I'd just seen. Fatigue, hallucination, some kind of psychological break. It had to be. But the figure had looked so real, so solid. I started walking again. I don't know why. Maybe because walking was the only thing that made sense, the only thing I could control. I'm still walking. I've been walking for I don't know how long. My watch stopped. My radio is dead. My flashlight is dim, flickering, but it hasn't gone out yet. I've passed my chalk mark dozens of times, maybe hundreds. I've stopped counting. Sometimes I see Carver in the distance, his flashlight beam bobbing as he walks. I call out, but he doesn't respond. I don't think he can hear me. Or maybe I'm calling out to a version of Carver from an hour ago, a day ago, a week ago. Time doesn't work right here. Sometimes I see myself. The older version, the one that's been here longer. He doesn't speak anymore, he just walks. We pass each other in silence, two figures on an endless loop. I've tried turning around. I've tried running. I've tried stopping and waiting for someone to find me. None of it makes a difference. The tunnel just continues. The lights stay on. The walls stay the same. And I keep walking because stopping feels worse. I think about the access door sometimes, the one at Harmon Station. I remember scanning my badge, hearing the lock disengage, stepping through. I remember the door closing behind me. I wonder if it's still there, just out of reach, always around the next corner I'll never turn. Or maybe the door was the last real thing I passed through, and everything since has been something else. A space that isn't a space. A tunnel that isn't a tunnel. A patrol that never ends because ending requires an exit. And exits require a world outside to exit into. I'm still walking. That's all I can do. One foot in front of the other, following the yellow stripe that never curves, never ends, just loops back on itself in ways that shouldn't be possible. And sometimes in the distance I hear footsteps that aren't mine, matching my pace exactly. I don't look back anymore. I've learned that what's behind me is just another version of what's ahead. The tunnel knows only one direction. Forward. And forward never stops. It just becomes another kind of staying.